as Declan Kinney said, I was just as much as part of it as everyone else. Back in 2009 when I was in the Bibs, I definitely didn't feel that way. But I think I remember some of the talks that were, made around those times. The O'Connells, the O'Driscolls, O'Garas, that were trying to achieve this for 10 years, and you could tell by, I suppose, their speeches and their actions through that season how much it meant to them, and they had to drag along guys like Luke Fitzgerald and Tommy, Bo, Rob Kearney, these young guys coming through, and it's very similar to that now. I think Rory is desperate for a Grand Slam because he feels that he will be a bigger part of it now than he played back then. So for us, it's about trying to drag those young lads along. They probably think they're going to get loads of opportunities, but as I know, it doesn't work out like that. I remember playing Scotland in Croke Park for a Triple Crown and almost taking it for granted because I thought Triple Crown, I'll have plenty more opportunities with this, and I still haven't won a Triple Crown. So you got to take these opportunities with both hands when they come.
Yeah, Johnny Sexton and Joe Schmidt speaking after the game was actually well into the night because they had to wait for England's game with France and Paris to conclude before Ireland were confirmed as Six Nations champions. Joe mentioned it on TV3 yesterday in the build-up to the Wales-Italy game. It's hard to believe that Johnny Sexton hasn't even won a Triple Crown. Like, he has 2 championships but no Triple Crown. I don't know if that's a prized possession. I guess it's something you want ticked off the bucket list, just to have one in the bank. You get it all done this weekend. You have your championship, your Grand Slam, your Triple Crown all boxed off on the same day if you can get the job done at Twickenham.
Yeah, absolutely. It's Triple Crowns were probably, without being disrespectful, more prestigious, back in the day, if you like.
Or even in the beginning of Eddie O'Sullivan's reign, wasn't it? I remember 2004 Triple Crown was a huge deal because it was an Ireland team that had won nothing.
I missed that one because I got injured at the World Cup in 2003 and I was in a sling at the game thinking, geez, we haven't won one since the 80s and I'm missing this now. And it was massive for the boys at the time. And it was massive for that group and their development.
Did you get one in 06 then?
No, knee injury in 06. But to be fair, the team went on a great run under Eddie at that time from probably 03, 04 up to 2008, 9, 10. A lot of success, contesting championships every year. But it was massive at the time. I'm not dissing it in any way now. Triple Crown is vital, but there's probably more emphasis now on winning the championship, isn't there? Because of the points scenario, and that's what's changed. Back then it was, top the table and not win a Triple Crown. It was not win a Grand Slam. It was probably not as great. It was nice kind of accolade, but now with all the points,
particularly for a team that hadn't won
points
anything.
Difference and the trophy for winning the tournament. It's massive, so it'll be huge. There's no doubt about it. It'll be huge, and
of course, if they win the
England
Triple
will
Crown, they've won the Grand
Slam. Rubbing
Slam,
their hands like.
Yeah, well, they will. We'll talk England maybe in a bit of detail in a moment. But you were around the squad in 2009. I know you didn't play in that game in Cardiff, but you were there. You were part of the preparations.
Like Johnny says, I was very much a part of it. I was in the Bibs for 6 weeks, holding tackling pads, and praying and hoping that
somebody went down.
Well, you kind of
like
you never want
Wallace
anyone injured, but I think a little calf strain or something like that. But the boy, there was a serious back rub. It was Heaslip, Wallace, Leamy. They were phenomenal. Ferris was in the mixes. Ferris was there as well. So it was unbelievable players.
What was the week like? Can you remember when you come back? And again, it was a win over Scotland that set up the Grand Slam decider.
Yeah,
and it was one that was hard fought
after the win in round 3 against England, which was only a 1-point win in Dublin here. And you probably think at the start of every tournament, and my history being involved in Six Nations campaigns, is you look at the fixtures, you know yourself as a player. When England and France are coming to Dublin, you think, this is a chance to beat the big two. Are we capable of going to Cardiff and Murrayfield and getting results? Of course we are. So there's a little bit more anticipation that this is your year, this is the opportunity. And this year we've done it the hard way. When you think, because France and England came to Dublin in 2009, but this time we've gone to Paris and we've got to go to Twickenham to win the Grand Slam. So in some ways it'll be more of an achievement, I think, to get those 2 big away
Sexton
wins.
said as much. He said to win a slam in an odd year would be, or an even year rather, would be a spectacular achievement. Tell me, so what is it going to be like? Yesterday was a day off. Obviously the players needed a little bit of time to recover. Is it just another game? Or is there just a slightly different feel to the place in Carton House today as they begin what is a potential historic week?
People on the outside and people who haven't experienced it are thinking, will it be in the back of the minds? What's the mindset like? Do you know what Scotland was like last week? A semi-final of a cup. Yeah. You're now in the final. So what do these players do when they're playing Heineken Cup finals? And a lot of them have done that, or Champions Cup finals, or big games in finals, and a lot of them have experienced that. Of course, there's extra pressure and there's extra nerves, but experience has helped you deal with that. There's a nervous anticipation. So Friday night, there'll be unbelievable buzz. You're in London, it's Paddy's weekend, loads of Irish there, you're going into a big cauldron. And there'll be that nervous excitement and anticipation. Would we have preferred as Irish people that England won? Probably, because now you're kind of the wounded animal, if you like, scenario, the backlash, the pressure on them. Eddie Jones will probably make some changes. So they'll be very aware of the threat. Going to Twickenham at any stage, even this little mini crisis that England are having, it's going to be incredibly different. And I said this day before the start of the tournament, I thought we'd get, and I was confident we'd get to this stage where we'd win against France, win our home games and go there. My concern was, and I'll be open and honest about it, was that it's going to be very difficult to win there. That's changed slightly. It's going to be difficult to win there. Not very difficult.
We go as favourites.
Yeah, well, you see,
we go as champions.
And this is the thing, and you think, what's the mindset of the players Saturday night? Did they go out and have a few drinks? Recovery is the most important thing after a game like that. How are we going to be as fresh and peaked and ready to rock and roll next Saturday? And that's the important thing. And then, then they've got to get the training right this week, get the balance right between intensity and getting the work done, if you like, and not overtraining. But they've got to explode out of the blocks next Saturday, because England will physically try and beat them up. And that's what happens when you play teams, in rugby anyway, in my experience. When you play someone who's lost the week before, you're going to get an anger, pressure, a real kind of a grueling intensity from them.
Especially with them at home.
Yeah, but I think in some ways, and part of me thinks this, that maybe because we haven't got that fourth or fifth gear scenario throughout this tournament. We've tipped into fourth a couple of times. The players acknowledge that. Joe Schmidt acknowledges that. Will we get up into that fifth gear? Is there a bit of pressure off now? Is this let's go, have a right crack at this? There's no point in losing next Saturday, being kind of conservative and playing within themselves and waiting for England to make mistakes. They've got to go and play, I think, next Saturday to get a result, because England will throw caution to the wind, they'll be dangerous at that stage. Now, we got to be robust and organised and maybe frustrate England into making mistakes, because confidence will be a bit low in the English. And, will they force a couple of errors? Will they try things that maybe may come against them? So we've got to be in that mindset where we put relentless pressure on them. But I think in some ways there's a confidence within this group, and there's a lot of characters that if they execute a little bit better, take the lead, even if it's only 3, 6, 9 points. If they get a couple of penalties, if they're going at half time ahead, the pressure is all on England here. Even though that sounds crazy, because we're the ones trying to win a Grand Slam, there's definitely more pressure in England to get a result. Okay,
would this sum up the game on Saturday? Clinical Ireland beat wasteful Scotland, because it didn't really appear to be a 20-point game, did it?
No, it didn't. And Scotland,
they've gifted us 7.
They definitely blew
and they've coughed
a
up
really clear-cut chance with the Hugh Jones pass in the first half. He does a lovely little dink kick, gets clean through, give the pass to Stuart Hogg, and he's under the post. It just didn't feel, we ended up being 7-3 up after 20 minutes, and it just didn't feel like we deserved that. It was against the run of play a little bit. Scotland were really good, and I think, chatting to some of the Scots afterwards, they were actually disappointed, of course, but pleased with their application, their effort, not their application, their effort, and they realised that, look, just a couple of things went against them and they could have been a lot closer. But any critics of the Irish team have got to realise that it's a 20-point win. We've 17 tries scored in 3 games. We didn't score any against France. That's a serious return in scoring. Okay, 8 of them are against Italy, but we've 2 bonus point wins. And if that was in Champions Cup, you'd be absolutely delighted to have bonus point wins at home. They're hard to come by, so...
I guess when we look back at this in 10 years' time, on this championship, particularly if we've won a Grand Slam, the numbers on the page won't reflect the way the games went.
Yeah, obviously. We're not jumping out of the seats, are we?
Yeah, it took the 84th minute or the early 3rd minute to beat the French. It took the last score of the game.
Are we being too greedy? I've thought about this over the weekend.
I don't know if we're being too greedy. I think it's just a realisation of how different things could have been and how fine the margins are. But that's elite top-level sport.
Yeah, it is, and there's probably mitigating factors maybe to the flow of the type of some of the game and the way things are breaking down a little bit, because they are trying to move the ball a fair bit.
Well, let's look at
the centre partnerships have changed the whole way through the tournament, which has a massive effect, you know, because that kind of midfield scenario is really vital to your attack.
They created chances and took them, which is how John Barclay, the Scottish captain, described it. What is it about this Ireland team that makes them so efficient when it comes to scoring tries? Because we do make the most of the chances that come our way.
They don't panic. I think they could score more if they were a little bit more clinical and take their opportunities and cut out the errors. We spoke about it after the game on Saturday, yourself and myself. They had 7 handling errors in the first half and none in the second half. So that's real efficiency, where you don't have that. You're not knocking the ball on, you're not losing it in contact, you're not getting it turned over. We lost a couple of lineouts in the first half, a couple of drop balls, turned the ball over. You want to keep those turnovers to a minimum, because it takes away what you're trying to do. So I thought they were, you know, it was a really, really resilient, determined performance, and with a lot of pressure as well and expectation to get a result. So, you know, I probably personally am guilty for expecting too much and expecting this brilliant performance. But it was a brilliant performance. We won by 20 points.
But you have to look at the areas for improvement, don't you? If you're going to be really critical of a team like Joe Schmidt will be.
Yeah, absolutely.
And defensively, while we have scored 17 tries, we have also conceded 3 against the Welsh, 3 against the Italians, 1 against France. Somehow we only got away with conceding 1 at the weekend. And while executing the skills under pressure and attack is what it has put Ireland in the position that they're in, we were again cut open multiple times, and it's becoming a regular theme now, isn't it? That it hasn't been enough to derail Ireland in this championship, but everything now is being watched through the prism of the World Cup, which is coming hurtling down the tracks now. We have to play this Scottish team twice next year. And at what stage do we really begin to worry about our vulnerabilities defensively?
I think if you take if you look at the line breaks and the couple of opportunities Scotland had, there's a piece of individual brilliance from Hugh Jones with that thin kick. You know, you got to applaud that. I said that a couple of weeks ago. You applaud that kind of stuff. Hogg was in midfield. You know, if that's a try, you stand up and say, brilliant piece of individual work. Once or twice, we just got a tiny little bit caught in one-on-one situations where we plant our feet and we make poor decisions. So, to be honest, the defence was a lot better on Saturday. In the wider channels, we didn't come as hard. We drifted as a group, and we gave up a few yards, and that can happen in the wider areas. We made our tackles and then contested a breakdown. And you get an opposition team in the touchline. That's where you want to get them slow down a little bit and then get off the line and win those collisions in midfield and put them behind the gain line. So I thought we did that really well. So for me, the defence was better. It was a lot better. It was a short period of time to improve that. So I think it was a lot better. Can it be better again? Of course. It can be more dominant and it can be more connected. I think the try Scotland scored, I think Jacob Stockdale sat down a little bit and planted his feet, and he has a tendency to do that. There was a little short runner, he kind of just stopped for him. Rob Kearney then has to come in and it's just a simple little pass in the corner. So people are saying that, you know, maybe it was Kearney's fault, but I think Stockdale needs to push him out and really let him know that he hasn't kind of bought that dummy runner on the short line.
It did seem to be numbered up as the attack unfolded.
Yeah. But you're talking about going soft in the wider channels. When you're that close to your line, that's when you probably need to get off the line a bit more aggressively, and we were a little bit passive getting off the line there. And it was a solid scrum, good attack from Scotland, but probably shouldn't have conceded that. And it would have been a massive boost from if they didn't. But realistic on the balance of play, Scotland probably should have had 2 tries on the board. You know, we would have been 15 point winners maybe then at that stage. So 20 points was a lot and it flattered us a little bit. But you 4 wins and that's the important thing. But I think we will, there is no doubt about it, we'll be sitting here next Monday morning and we'll be saying we either changed those gears and went from 3rd stroke 4th up into 5th for a few occasions. and we'll be here as winners and Grand Slam winners, because if we don't improve, if we don't actually go out and improve the performance to take it up another level, you're not going to beat England, because you know, we can't get lulled into this scenario. England are not as good as maybe they were, but they're capable. If Eddie Jones makes some changes, he puts Owen Farrell into 10, puts Theo and Joseph in the centre, that's a serious midfield. If he picks some back row players, will he bring Simmons into the back row? Don Armand, the Exeter player, who's very underrated and unheralded, if you like. He's been fantastic for Exeter. He could start. I just think that balance of Courtney Laws, Rob Shaw and Hughes, they're all big, strong men, and the game has changed so much now with the back row. We've seen it throughout this tournament. There's so many, there's a contest at every breakdown.
And not a 7 in sight, really, amongst those three.
No, they're not. And when you look at our back row, we have Levy winning turnovers on Saturday. It was fantastic. Peter O'Mahony. And sometimes it's not about winning back row, the ball and getting those turnovers. It's slowing the ball down. That 2 seconds or second and a half or whatever it is, it gets your defence set. It's massive.
And as Eddie Jones has said, they are being left behind in the break-in 16 pounds.
But he's so bullish, he might go and say to him, well, I'll back you now to respond.
Well, he backed them
because, to be fair,
after the Scotland game, didn't he?
And the guys who've lost these 2 games, they've won a huge amount. We're talking about that run at the start. But I think a more dangerous England will involve changes, and that'll be Farrell at 10.
16 penalties against the French. Ireland are averaging 5 per game. If you're going to concede close to 20 penalties in a game, you've absolutely no chance of winning it. And yet they were in injury time at the end of the game in Paris. For some reason, Lionel Boxey's opting to try and kick for touch around halfway instead of just dropping the ball. There's an awful lot to look forward to this week, Alan. You'll be a huge part of it. It's here. We'll talk to you Thursday.
Thanks Dave. Pleasure.
Final word on the game at the weekend. Ireland beating Scotland to set up this Grand Slam tilt at England at Twickenham. Here was Hugo McNeill on Gary Ringrose's performance.
Gary Ringrose is a natural centre. He's played all his life at that. I think it's the most difficult position on the field to play because you've so little space, you're so constricted. Gordon Darcy, much more recent and much more better player than I ever was said it took him 4 years to switch from the wing or full back to centre. And Gordon Darcy was a child prodigy when he sort of came out. So I think that's, it goes back to the point that we were sort of making at the start, that Gary Ringrose, he's always lived in this area where you have very little space, where you need to react quickly, where you need to sort of be able to click with the guys beside you. And I think what's going to be really exciting, if Gary Ringrose gets a run, in the team, that you have somebody who's just a natural player. And
I think it's really interesting, Hugo, whether really good 13s have naturally that brilliant spatial awareness, or whether they develop it by living in that tiny space that you're talking about. I think it's a really interesting point. Yeah. He looks to me like a guy who actually has that peripheral natural awareness.
We've talked about it before in here, is that the most important person, and we talked about New Zealand having a constant midfield when they won the World Cup with Dan Carter, with Manonu, but Conrad Smith Smith was the most influential player. He was the guy who, with everything he did, made sense. It always just smoothed the back line. In the first try that New Zealand scored in the last World Cup at Twickenham, the final, Conrad Smith was involved in 3 times, and none of them were flashy moves, none of them were breaks. They were link passes, they were creation of space.
Yeah, well, Gary Ringrose was limping very heavily towards the end of the game on Saturday, so fingers crossed he comes through training this week unscathed. Ireland can ill afford another change to midfield, given that there's no sign of Chris Farrell and Robbie Henshaw coming back anytime soon. Bundyaki could do with a little bit of consistency alongside him in midfield as Ireland go to look and win at Twickenham to win the Grand Slam.